Hey guys, so thanks for watching this video on the transportation costs for boys and girls basketball away games. This is looking off of the North Montgomery High School schedule for both freshman through varsity levels. Um, did not do middle school because it is a much different setup than it is at the high school, and I wanted to focus only on the high school for this particular project. The transportation really is set up through each athletic director. The middle school at North Montgomery is separate from the high school and has its own athletic director, so I only wanted to focus on the high school one for this particular project. So you see from left to right, I've got the date of the contest, the sport. GBB stands for girls basketball, and then 3Bs stand for boys basketball. Beside that, I have the level. You can see JV varsity, only JV games, and then there's freshmen as well. The location of where the game is going to be played at, along this column here, you can see a lot of them are going to be repeats when you have tournaments and such at the same locations, so don't be alarmed by that. Miles to destination one way, and then miles back home. Obviously, that's just going to be multiplied by 2, assuming that the bus and the bus driver take the same route. Bouncing off our conversation with the transportation director of the school corporation, in our conversation, he said that in order to operate the bus, he roughly uses the 50 cent per mile mark for this. So that's wear and tear, tires, fuel, that sort of thing. And then I figured up the hours gone that the driver will be paid. So drivers are paid $11 an hour, and then you would take that by how many times, or excuse me, how many hours they're going to be gone from their home base. The drivers are paid for every hour they are gone, not just when they are driving. I do actually have my CDL for the corporation, so I will drive occasionally when buses have to take off earlier than school may get out, or when drivers get back from their normal routes. You'll see some games are highlighted in yellow. That stands for a sectional game off the schedule. Obviously, if you lose that first one, then you're not going to be playing the rest of them. So if you look here for girls, they have 3 dates. So that first, you're guaranteed that first date there on the 29th or the 1st, depending on where you're falling. But that next date is not guaranteed. You have to win. Same for boys down here. That 26th or 27th is a guaranteed game. One of those dates, however, and then you got to win to get on to the next round. So I went ahead and calculated that all the way through. So let's look at these. I'll click on this total box over here. Is just going to show the calculations. So basically, what I did was take our miles to the destination plus the miles home, put those in parentheses in order to get the right calculation, and then multiplied that by 50 cents to get the proper calculation. And then on top of that, I added in our hours gone column, which is this H column here, and then our driver pay was a multiplication piece of that hours gone. So essentially, I did the math on this section here, multiplied it by the 50 cents, and then added whatever the sum was, or whatever the multiplication was, rather, of these two columns here. And so when you look at that, that's $134 total for the corporation to drive and play, essentially, Elwood High School in terms of transportation. So we scroll down here, and I didn't know this, but $3,500 for just 2 sports, basically, is quite a bit. You're looking at freshman games. You're looking at some JV games only, some varsity games only. That's a lot of that's a big cost for a school corporation for just 2 sports. Now, some of the time you're going to use short buses or mini buses, activity buses, whatever they call them. But I did not factor that in on this particular assignment. I just made it one even thing across the board. The transportation director didn't hint on what it costs to operate an activity bus. Probably a little bit lower than a normal bus. However, you actually have to have coaches that are willing to drive an activity bus and teachers that are willing to drive an activity bus. Some teachers and coaches don't want to drive it, so therefore you actually have to take a big bus. So that may be something the corporation looks at in the future if they're having trouble with transportation costs, is, how can we incorporate an activity bus in there. So $3,500, a little over $3,500 for the entire basketball season in terms of men and women. Obviously, if they go on past the sectional, then there's going to be some additional costs in there, but none of our basketball teams have gone past the first game of sectional in quite some time, so not much going on there. Again, as I mentioned, the big bus puts a lot less pressure on a coach driving. Buses are one of the most safest vehicles on the road, so anytime you can get a big bus, I would probably recommend it. I guess that's a personal opinion, but I would certainly recommend it to people. On the hours side, the hours side is unique because typically, if a bus driver is driving the bus, normally they're not going to get paid anything less than 4 hours. So you'll see a lot of 4s in there. For the freshman ones, these are typically the ones right over here that an activity bus is used quite often. So therefore, and there's only usually one game, so you'll see the numbers a lot lower in the 3s, typically 3.5, depending on the drive. JV varsity rides the same bus over for boys and girls, so you can factor that in. Some of the dates you'll see that there's games at the same location on the same day, so like this 28th and 29th of December. For boys, it's the same as the 28th and 29th of December for the girls. They're playing tournaments, so they're going to take at least 2 buses to Delphi High School, which is 40 miles away from North Montgomery High School. That's a good drive. It's a time-consuming drive, and expensive for the school corporation for back-to-back days. They will not combine boys and girls teams on one bus. However, they will combine freshmen up to varsity on one bus for one specific gender. Also factoring in here, or not factored in here, is the cheerleaders going to games. They also take a separate bus at North Montgomery. So that's another factor to consider. Now, they only go to boys' games. They do not go to girls' games typically on the road. So you'd only be looking at boys' varsity games. But again, that's another cost that would probably up the total season cost to roughly $4,000 or somewhere around there. I would guess, but that's something else to keep in mind about the school corporation. They try and provide transportation to everybody that needs it and do a very good job of it. Thanks for watching.